I'm really, really pleased that so many people have come tonight, and the audience is actually quite an interesting mix of different people. There are many business owners, there are a few people who perhaps have an interest, a connected or a vested interest in what we're doing tonight, and there are many people who are perhaps at a bit of a crossroads in their lives, very much the situation that Sarah and I were in when we first met about 2.5, 3 years ago. Mike, you mentioned that the 240th anniversary, is it today or around this time?
No, it's this year.
This year?
Yes.
Today is the 2nd anniversary of the existence of MojoLife. And I didn't know that until Sarah mentioned it the other day. And still going in a recession. So we've been going for 2 years. It was 2 years to the day that we incorporated the business. And I just want to explain what the business is about and why it's connected with this particular evening. When Sarah and I first met, I had gone through a kind of a personal reinvention after a very, very difficult business partnership collapsed in a heap and left my life in not a great place. And for those of you who know me, I spent 22 years in the golf industry. So it's obviously a seamless transition to move from that into doing what I do now in storytelling and business communication. But in many respects, it is a seamless transition because I've always been a storyteller. I've always loved the impact of stories and what they have on other people and how they resonate and chime with people. And then when Sarah told me her story of reinvention after 12 years with the British Council, travelling the world, loving her job, and then that was all taken away from her with redundancy. When she told me that she'd written a blog after having got nowhere with normal job search techniques, and then she was found, not just by anybody, but by the Slovenian cultural ambassador, who said, "Sarah, I love what you've written, would you come and speak at the embassy in Amsterdam?" I thought, well, there's something in this story business. And of course, the notion of having a story to tell is really, really important, whether you're trying to develop and grow a business or whether you're looking for work of some kind. It doesn't really matter, it's the same principle of having something to say which is compelling, which is authentic, and which stands out from the crowd. And as Mike was correctly saying there, it's very much about finding what makes you you, both as an individual and as a company or an organisation, and crafting a story around that and then telling it really, really well. So I want to introduce you to somebody, makes it sound like he's actually here, Philippe Dubost, I came across recently. Now, Philippe was in France in December looking for work, and he wasn't getting anywhere. He wanted to work as a web product manager. Now, I don't really know what a web product manager is. Maybe somebody who could enlighten me. But he wasn't getting very far with conventional search techniques. And then he decided to do a CV that was a bit different. And this is what he did. He created a CV in the form of an Amazon page. So instead of hiring him, you add him to cart. There's only one left in stock. And he has all these, little star ratings to show off his skills and attributes as he sees them. Now, I think what's interesting about this is that he didn't go down the conventional route, the thing that everybody tells you that you're meant to do, with your normal CV technique and your application letter and so forth. He actually did it his own way. And I think what's even more interesting is the outcome that he generated for himself. After sending his CV to a very popular French blog, they got hold of it, then CNN got hold of it, all sorts of news agencies around the world started writing about it and interviewing him. His profile was hit 200,000 times a day, 27,000 Facebook likes, and over 100 offers of work from around the world. And I think what's really interesting about this is that he was happy to be himself and to portray his own particular skills, attributes in his own way. He had a good story to tell about himself, but he found a really interesting way of telling it. He used a channel which has not been freely available to other people until recent years. And of course he did so by putting something out there which was very distinctive, which would cheese off a lot of people and say, no, you can't do that, that's not the way we do things. But do you know what? He doesn't want to work for those people. So he attracted the right people for him. People who saw his particular technique and his creativity in doing what he did as being of something of interest. So he used it as what we would term a piece of attraction marketing. And that's something we can all do as individuals and businesses, is to tell a really distinctive, compelling story about ourselves, put it out there, be happy not to be loved and liked by everybody, but to attract the right people for us. And it's a wonderful form of pull or attraction marketing. So I think the dilemma that we all face, whether we're job seekers or business owners, is how do we get noticed? How do we tell a great story about who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it? And how do we get people listening? Now, I was having a conversation with someone tonight about the use of social media as well in this regard. You know, where's the return on investment? How do we know that, you know, tweeting or spending time, you know, online in that way is going to have a, you know, a return for us? And I read a really interesting blog this morning by a woman who was writing, actually she was writing in the I newspaper, you know, the independent, the I newspaper. And she said that traditionally, marketing and advertising has taken quite a long time to set up. You know, you have a campaign which you plan over many weeks and months, and it takes a while for it to come to fruition. But what happens now, increasingly, is that you have instant marketing because of social media. In the moment, real time. And she gave a wonderful example of this at the Super Bowl. Anybody recall recently that at the Super Bowl there was a power cut? The lights went off for a while. I don't know how long it was for. Was it 15, 20 minutes or something? And the people who make Oreos, the biscuits, launched a Twitter campaign in that very instant which said, "You can still dunk in the dark." And they got loads of traction and traffic. You know, 16,000 retweets to people who then in turn may have 10, 20, 30,000 contacts themselves. So that's an example of seizing an opportunity in the moment, and that's what things like social media allows us to do. So the landscape's very, very different now. You've got to put something out there which is quite quirky, quite distinctive, and that gets people talking about you. And one of the things that we do a lot of work with, Sarah and I, is we work with organisations to help them understand what makes them distinctive. And I think this principle applies equally to individuals as well. We're often told, are we not, that we have to have a USP, a unique selling point. And people will trot off things like, well, we're really hot on customer service, or we care for our clients, or we give you a personal service. Well, join the queue, because everyone says the same thing. And that's actually not a USP, that's a CSP, that's a common selling point. What I think is really unique in any organisation is your people, is the relationships they have, and the stories they generate. And the reason those things are unique is because you're in them. Hence the use of the USP rather than USP. So if you can put more of you into your communication, and I'm talking not just about organisationally, but also, you know, the individuals within an organisation, if you can get them talking about some of the stuff they're doing, tapping into the gold that exists within these companies, then you start to be unique, you start to find your voice. And it's that thing that really helps you to stand out and engage with people on a wider level. One of the things I really love about marketing these days, I think it was a quote from Seth Godin, who's one of my favourite marketing gurus. He's based in New York. He contrasts the Marxist principle. I don't know whether any of you studied this in the past. Any raving lefties in the room? I did that kind of stuff at university. That's Karl Marx. Karl Marx used to talk about the fact that because capitalists own the means of production, i.e. factories, that's the thing that enabled them to dominate the proletariat, the normal hoi polloi. But Seth Godin's point, and I really agree with this, is that we all own the means of production now. And that's stuff like this. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. These are our broadcasting mechanisms. These are our megaphones. We can all have a TV channel or a radio station. So that presents a wonderful opportunity for people to sort of punch above their weight and find an audience, or at least broadcast freely with no barriers to entry. But of course the reverse of that is that because everybody can broadcast, there's a lot of nonsense out there, and there's lots of noise out there. And again, this comes back to my original point that you need to have a really strong message and a strong, authentic story like the one that Sarah told, like the one that Philippe Dubos told, to stand out and be heard amongst all of that noise. And that's the reason we do what we do at MojoLife. It's helping companies and individuals to find their voice, to find their mojo, and when you find your mojo, you attract. But you only attract the right people for you. But that's a good thing, because you don't need everybody.